Hey everybody, I'm with my friend Seth today, and we're going to talk about why young people leave church. So join us for this episode next. Hey Seth, thanks for joining me today, and tell all the guys about yourself.
I am a senior here at Great Lakes Adventist Academy, and I work with Pastor Jeff Achenberger as the SA pastor.
Oh, fantastic. So as an SA pastor, I'm sure you've had plenty of opportunities to have spiritual conversations with young people. And as I stated earlier, we're talking about why young people are leaving the church. What are some of the reasons you're hearing that? Because I think the percentages out there are pretty bad, as in like 70% after they graduate from high school, and it isn't dependent on any type of religion. Most Christian churches, a lot of young people, 70% leave at least for a while. And we don't know the data on how many come back after a few years or whatever, but that's a huge number. But what are young people telling you are some of the reasons?
I think something that I've been thinking through recently in talking is a lack of involvement.
Okay.
I remember I was specifically talking to one student here. We were just having a friendly conversation, and we were talking about, the church, and he's like, yeah, at my church, I really don't do anything. I just go. I was like, do you consider it your church anymore? And he's like, no, it's not really my church anymore. And just talking through stuff, and he was talking about how he really didn't do anything.
Okay, so he doesn't feel like there's anything to do. So that's interesting. So he, and I'm not trying to put words in your or his mouth. So it sounds like he wanted something to do.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I think that's fair to say. It's like he wanted involvement. He wanted to be there, but.
So let me push back a little bit. And again, you can't speak for him, but why didn't he just get involved? How come it's not that simple? Why you say, hey, I'm going to start doing something? Should it be that simple, or is there something we're missing?
Yeah, I think it could be that simple. It depends, I think, too, on how cemented the people in your church are already. Like maybe there's a room because everyone's already doing something, and then it's just like now you're to the age where you want to do something. It's like, oh well, that's already being done, or that's already being done, or whatever. Okay,
so do you think that there might be scenarios where, we need it done a certain way, and we're not necessarily wanting to teach someone new. Okay. What are some other reasons?
Something that I was talking to someone about recently was a lack of relationships. They didn't really see they didn't really feel like they're connecting with these people that they only saw once a week. On Saturday morning, it's like, happy Sabbath, how are you, and then they just go sit in their pew and they go through the church service and then they leave. And I think that might be a contributing factor to why young people are leaving the church.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I've never processed this or counted this, but how many people in your life do you only say happy Sabbath to? Or if you go to church on a different day, like, good morning or whatever, like, how many people do you know that, and they go to your church, that the only two words you say to them are happy Sabbath or good to see you or whatever? It's this very basic thing. But I mean, I'm embarrassed to say there are people that I've known my entire life that the only thing I've really ever said to them was happy Sabbath, because we don't spend any time outside of that.
It's just you go to church and you're there, and
right. I have no ill will towards them growing up or anything. Matter of fact, I think of them rather fondly, but if I think about it, the only thing, if I've probably used 10 words over and over for 40 years. That's crazy. Why do you think that happens?
I think it's maybe a major thing is you just don't see them any other time. And so it's just like,
right.
These are the typical things you say on a Sabbath morning or a Sunday morning or whatever. And it's just like, you don't see them any other time. So it's just, there's no real relationship connection. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And so, is it possible so going back to what you're saying, is it possible that how it would be with youth, except one day, so like old people, they just die and you go, oh man, they died. But with young people, they just disappear, and you're like, "Hey, where'd they go? I want to say those 10 words to them."
Yeah. So it's like all of a sudden, they aren't there anymore. It's just like, oh,
Right.
here's my morning, and they're not.
Are we mad that they're not coming to church, or are we mad because we think that because they're not coming to church, they don't have a relationship with Jesus? Like, what's the reason why there's a concern that they're not coming to church? Because follow my logic here. If we're making church attendance some sort of salvational thing, like, hey, you didn't come to church, you must be going to hell or whatever. My friend Cameron says, what was it, like the Sabbath, the sermon on the ear is like the wafer on the tongue, or some type of thing he says, where like people will think that they've done their duty, and so therefore heaven is theirs because they went to church every week, and maybe it's more than that. Maybe it should be more than that.
Yeah. So like, I'm thinking perhaps like it's this idea that it's like a checklist maybe.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the young people don't show up, and it's like, oh, they're not getting their checklist done maybe, or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because like you could argue, if I'm a young person and you're like, hey, how come you're not coming to church anymore because you're 20 now and you're gone, or 19 or whatever. And I'm like, you didn't care about me for, you never said 2 words to me, like now you're mad that I'm not showing up. Yeah, that could be a major issue. How do we fix that? Like what, because a lot of men are watching or listening to this podcast. How do you see men helping to change that?
I think that it really boils down to, saying more than those 10 words, right? So like, it's like, making time, making an effort to connect, and other times maybe outside of your typical Sabbath morning, making time to connect and listen. And if you're going back to the involvement thing, like making room for involvement, right? Making young people, making young men feel like they're wanted in the church.
So that kind of sounds a little bit like mentorship. Were you mentored at all growing up?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so give me some examples of how you were mentored. I mean, was it just your dad, or?
There was quite a few mentors in my life. I remember one specific time. I really have been working on my public speaking, and I have a mentor, and him and I are really close, and I will frequently just like call him on the phone and like talk to him about public speaking, and then like say, hey, can I preach my sermon to you or whatever?
Sure.
And then there's that type of mentorship, or it's like just someone you can that you're connected with, and it's just like, hey, I have this issue, I have this problem. I'm gonna call them and just kind of get their feedback on the situation or whatever it is.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so do you see those guys as people you can count on to this day?
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. Now, dumb question, but I'll put you on the spot. Like, do you have any plans of leaving the church?
No, I don't think so. It's almost like it comes down to, if you as a man, if you as adults build a relationship with the young people in your church, it's like, hey, I'm a young person, but I don't really want to leave my church because I have these friends in my church. I have these people that I can count on in my church. And so it's that mentorship where you're building this relationship, you're building this friendship, you're building this mentorship relationship with the young people in your church. So when it comes time for them, when they turn 18 or 19, it's like, man, I miss my church. I miss the people that I see. Right. I miss the people that I connect with outside of church, right? And it's like, I don't want to leave because I formed these deep relationships with the people in my church.
Yeah. And when those relationships are in the church, you would stay there, right? So if the only deep relationships you had were in a different location, you would go there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of people that have really deep history and relationship with people that are in other circles, whether that be hobbies or bars or golf courses, but they go there because that's where it's at. But really, it should be at the church where we have our deepest connections.
For sure.
Yeah, that's really good. And so here's my challenge. Our challenge for the Man Talk today is look for people in your church, or look for people in your area If you're not attending church, you should go check it out. But if you're at church, look for people that you can mentor, or look for people that you can connect with. It would be horrible for you to go to, and think about this, you go to a party and nobody's talking to you. It would be horrible that you go to church and feel lonely. But I think that God has called us to really look out for one another. And so look for those people, whether they're young or old, to connect with, to form that brotherhood with. But specifically in today's context with young people, don't be afraid to go up to youth and ask them to help you do something, right? I mean, in your case, do they ask you, when these mentors, do they ask you to help them perform any service in church? Or?
Yeah, I remember my pastor specifically, he's like, hey, we've been talking, can you preach a sermon for me? I'm not going to be here this Sabbath or whatever.
Okay, so they gave you the pulpit.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Okay, did you do anything else? Like, were you ever a deacon or AV or anything like that?
Before I came to GLA, I worked on the a little bit in the AV booth at my church, and also playing the piano.
So don't be afraid to ask young men to help you as you help others. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Many of them will say yes. So that's this episode of Man Talk. And as always, we have 3 rules, right? 3 rules. Number 1, love God.
Love everybody.
That's right. Love everybody. And duct tape, it fixes everything. Thanks for watching.